All right, folks, before we start with taking this guy apart, I want a shout out for Jeremy. This is 20 years of this project. 20 years of networking, 20 years of CPE credits, 20 years of getting email telling you it's cheaper when you sign earlier. No, seriously, MIT is very proud for this partnership, and thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, Chuck, you did a big part of it.
No, I have 2 years? Come on, that's not right.
And I appreciate that you placed me between this lovely audience and drinks. The prime agenda topic spot.
And, by the way, he gets great guest speakers. Witness this guy right here. So, what's your name again? Rich?
I'm Rich Puccio.
Full disclosure, Rich and I go way back. So I was the audit chair of Netezza, and Rich was the PwC partner. So let's start this off. Why would a partner that's cruising into retirement, lowering his handicap, which is very high, why would you take this job, Rich? I know you played football at Harvard. Is this a Tom Brady thing? Like, you got to do it more or what?
No, so I would say there were two things. One, for those of you who don't know, public accounting firms have a mandatory retirement age at 60, which didn't actually appeal very much to me. Two other interesting dynamics. I was at a sort of an inflection point in my career as a partner at PwC. I just was finishing my final year on Dell. And so between Dell and EMC, I'd spent just about 8 years working across those two companies. I signed my last set of accounts at the end of March of 21. And knowing that was upcoming, I was already sort of looking at what my next gig inside of PwC would be when the opportunity to interview for the CFO job at Amazon, or at AWS, excuse me, came along. And for me, the opportunity to go to a place that was disrupting an entire industry while it was still in a nascent stage, and I know it sounds strange to call it the nascent stage because it's a $82 billion run rate company within inside of Amazon. However,
Do you know what nascent means?
Yes.
Okay.
So, again, especially those of you in Boston, you're used to fast incubation of companies. AWS was sort of born in 2006 and has grown pretty rapidly. And I know we're probably going to talk about this later, so I'll jump ahead. But we're at this interesting point where sort of 85 to 90% of the workloads that people typically have in the cloud or would put in the cloud are still being run on-prem in data centers. So there's this massive opportunity that exists, which is why I say we're in a nascent stage, because we've only been at this since 2006, and there's only about 10 to 15% of the workloads in the cloud today.
Impressive. So a year ago, in your seat, I don't know if this is working. In your seat, I had the CFO from Spotify, and I went to the audience and I said, how many people are on Spotify? I'm not even going to talk about AWS and who's on AWS, because you're on it. Whether you know it or not, you're on it, 100%. The philosophy that Bezos had was he was a dreamer. I mean, he was clearly a visionary, and he always thought long term. He was always customer obsessed, and he always said invest and invest hard. How does the whole growth and actually birth and growth of AWS come out of that?
So it's interesting. I think there was, and it evolved from conversations between Jeff and Andy Jassy, who's now the CEO of Amazon, about the opportunity they had to take that customer obsession that they were seeing and using in the retail and consumer world and bring it to serving commercial customers in the technology space. Because if the platform they had built internally to run the broader Amazon was a fantastic, powerful tool. And they had a vision of turning that into the ability to a cloud where companies could essentially buy, as you need them, IT services. A phenomenal concept that allows companies to do a lot of different things in a very fast, expedited way and much more cost efficiently than running on-prem. And they knew that model because they had built data centers to run Amazon all over the place. So once you understand that dynamic, you see there's a huge proposition to help companies with that same issue.
Yeah, at the time when he started this, I was the interim CEO of Aspen Technology, and we weren't doing so well, and we were getting targeted by Amazon for a lot of our engineers. And I'm getting all these resignations, and they're saying, chemical engineers and supply chain engineers, and they're going to an e-commerce bookseller. I couldn't understand it. And they said, oh, no. They're going to change the world in many ways. So he really front-ended that investment. The capital investment in these data centers is humongous. So if you folks remember back, he was getting a lot of flack on Wall Street. I mean, they kept losing more and more and more money. It was like looking at a chart that just kept going south. And he persisted, and he knew what he was going to do long term. It's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, they leveraged that vision to be the early leader. They started out, they started out with a simple storage solution was one of the early products that attracted a lot of people. And then they've kind of we've built services and enhanced functionality throughout that entire tenure. And at this time, there's over 200 services that run on AWS, whether it's, your basic stuff that everybody's using, compute and storage and database. But as it continues to evolve, it's more powerful analytics tools. And one of the things we're seeing a ton of today is the continuing development around machine learning and large language models. And so we've heavily invested there to build really powerful ML tools. And having those available.
All my questions. Now what am I going to ask now? You're just going all through the thing.
I'll stop. So there.
No, I'm kidding.
That vision, the ability to, and then to develop all those services, gives you a real first mover opportunity.
Yeah. I did a little research on AWS, and it surprised me to find out that 75% of the operating profit of Amazon Inc. comes from AWS. 1/6 of the revenue, 75% of the operating profit. Remarkable. So you were the partner on EMC, Bell, at PwC, and they had a similar situation with VMware, and they decided to spin it out, go public, and why not? Why not you, man? You could be that much front and center. So
it's actually not a consideration. There's a pretty strong, firm belief between Jeff, Andy, and the rest of the leadership team that there's an awesome symbiotic relationship, right? We had the opportunity and continue to have the opportunity to work with a huge organization as a customer that allows us to learn new things, develop new products, and then you flip it around the other way, and Amazon has opportunities to innovate faster, whether it's in their ads business, in their in the satellite business, pick a business, they're innovating on AWS. And it brings powerful benefits across the pan-Amazon. Good example, this was announced sometime in the last 6-9 months. We went into a big partnership with Stellantis in their car making. We're going to help them with the automation of the cabin of cars. But they're also going to work with and use software developed in other parts of Amazon. So big Amazon benefits because of the linkage to the car company. We benefit because they're running all of that data. Think about all of the data collection points inside your car today, right? You don't roll your windows down and turn the radio anymore. Everything's run on an electronic console that is beaming signals back to a database. So super powerful, the relationship between both companies.
That sounds a little scary too. You know everything about us, right? Do you have to tiptoe through the
it's interesting.
Regions and stuff?
It's interesting. One of the biggest topics, and it's not just a domestic topic; it's a big topic around the world, is data privacy, data residency. So
especially in Europe.
Especially in Europe, although they're leading, so it's possible they could go other places similarly. But one of the things that's foundational to everything we build is security and protection of the data layer, because that's where most folks are concerned, is who could get to my data. So first and foremost, everything about our platform and all of our applications is built around the strongest security certifications in the industry.
Well, there goes another question. Okay. Competitive landscape.
Sure.
Rich. So, not only do you have this incredibly profitable company, but as far as the TAM goes and what your domination is in that, I won't use that word for the government, but you have a third of that business. You were the first player into the market, really, of substance, and you continue to just keep strengthening that positioning. What's the competitive landscape, and what do you look out for the most?
So So I don't really love to talk about other companies, but I'll
you can
I'll
do
give you
that.
my
That's-
perspective.
we're all friendly here, don't
No, I
worry.
get it. So from a competitive perspective, and you have to look at it in geographically a little bit different in some places. So, broad terms, obviously the two next largest competitors are GCP and Azure. Also, both very high growth, very strong companies. However, in that space, again, we have a first mover advantage and the most developed and broadest array of services. And Jeff has another expression he uses, and I hear it every once in a while. For the scientists and mathematicians, there's no compression algorithm for experience. So we've been at it the longest. We have the best understanding, the deepest services. So, that's how we compete. Now, if you broaden it to take a bit of a more global view, outside of the U.S., particularly in the Middle East and Asia Pac, Alibaba is incredibly strong. And they have a real lock on China business.
Can you talk a little bit about your China business and your strategy going forward? And
So we operate two full regions in China, and we are continuing to invest there. We're continuing to grow there. We've got a great leadership team that is working on bringing in new business over there. And it's also an important geography for global companies. So global companies that run on our platform want to have availability to run in China. So
but it's hard for an American company to operate in China.
It is absolutely more difficult to operate in China, but prior to me, they developed a really strong operating model and partnerships in China to help us be able to operate and deliver those services, because some of our largest global companies operate and run applications in China.
Is there any fail-safe structure to that? Like, let's say, God forbid, something happens there, politically, shut down, et cetera. Is there fail-safe, or are you positioned for that, or you can't talk about that?
Well, I guess I'd position it this way. We have, and we just recently announced, just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've announced 2 additional regions, and we had announced one over the summer, so 3 new regions. So at this point, we have 29 regions around the world, and that represents 93 or 94 availability zones. Wow. So the
and
opportunity.
They're fail-safe? They follow.
So if you're well architected and have an ability to fail over from a region, because we have to plan. If you think about a data center, we have to think about the impact of a major seismic event. All of those things. So we have to build an ability to fail over if a data center has a problem. So a well architected company has their workloads able to port and run in more than one region. And so there's an element of that. Now, that doesn't work for everything, right? Because if you're a financial institution or you're a government agency, you might have absolutely stringent latency requirements. So you might not be able, you can't fail over from China to the United States. But maybe you can fail over from China to Australia, as an example, just where there'd be another region.
And you just built a new region, right? Switzerland.
Yep, we just launched Switzerland. We just launched Spain. And earlier in the summer, we launched in Dubai in the Middle East.
Okay, so talk about when you launch, you open a new data center. Explain to these people, all we know about is the cloud. It's this invisible thing out there. Talk about a data center. What does it look like?
Sure. So you probably have all seen a picture. If you go on Google Maps or any of them and look at an aerial view, it looks like a ginormous warehouse with a bunch of mechanicals around it. But if you think about the process for us is, first of all, we're identifying markets where there's obvious demand and where you need to be in the market to provide the latency and performance requirements that are necessary. So then it's identifying the right piece of real estate, whether it's owned or leased, because the other part of this is there's an awful lot of colo providers around the world that have data center facilities. But I'll use the example where we build one. We have to find the real estate, identify it, get it connected to power, and then sort of simplify it down and think about the data center from the outside in. First thing you want to think about is the perimeter, because the security of these data centers is super important. And we all talk about the cybersecurity. I'm actually talking about the physical security and protection of the building. Then you go in from the perimeter and you see the infrastructure layer. So that's all the operating systems, backup generators, power, cooling. And then you go to the third layer, which is the data layer, right? And that's the most important place. That's where all of your sensitive and private information is. That's where we focus all of our attention on the security of the data inside our data centers. So if you can imagine all of the identification requirements just to get into a place where there's data.
How big are these centers?
Oh, they vary in size, but football fields upon football
Really?
fields. Yeah, I don't know the exact average square footage, sorry, but they're massive facilities. And if you saw maybe one of the big Amazon fulfillment centers, they're taller. But
Yeah.
some of our large data centers are that size.
Wow.
And so then the last piece of it is sort of all of the environmental factors that I've sort of mentioned before is, when you're building a data center, you don't want to build it where it could be subject to flooding. You don't want to build it where there could be a major earthquake. So it really narrows the field to places that you can build data centers that you can count on not having a environmental impact. Plus the other things we're always looking at is, how do we reuse water? How do we put it back into places after it's been used to cool things in the data center? And the other thing, which is getting more important, and I know you were all in an ESG session earlier, many of you were, one of the things we're on a path to is by 2025, we will be running 100% on renewable energy.
Really?
Yeah, we are Amazon, and a big piece of it is AWS, is the largest procurer of renewable energy in the world.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And so you think about that, we're planning out all the way, for 10, 20 years for this, but we've accelerated significantly. And that's, pick your product. It's rooftop solar, where we have these big buildings.
Yeah.
It is offshore wind farms. It is onshore, on the ground solar. So we're heavily invested in the creation of new renewable energy generation sources to allow us to power. And it'll be more and more important as everybody gets smart about all of the things you're going to have to report globally around environmental,
Right.
and you have to look at your sort of your level 2 emissions. And so what are your vendors doing?
Yeah.
Well, we can help because we will be running on renewable energy.
Are your
which
competitors
is super,
doing that?
Absolutely, they're doing it, but nobody's doing it
Not
at our
as
scale.
intensely.
No.
So that could be a differentiator for people.
Yeah, and look, we
going to the cloud.
as a company have been heavily invested in this. We've founded the Climate Pledge, which is all about getting corporations to sign up to meeting these Paris Climate Accord, rules, and for many of them, trying to get them to accelerate. Because there's a huge opportunity. Data centers in most places are the largest consumers of power there is. And in many places in the world, there's finite power. I mean, as an example, Singapore shut off data centers a couple of years ago. You can't build a new data center in Singapore. And that's because they're concerned about power.
Interesting. So as a CFO, and how far out do you have to look? These are multi-billion-dollar investments, right?
We in AWS tend to have at least a 10-year planning horizon.
10 years.
10 years, because we're looking out at what we're going to need for capacity 10 years out. So looking at machine learning models to help us forecast out how far we're going to have demand. And then you have to start working that back. And one of the dynamics that anybody who's done anything building anywhere recently is the process is much slower, right? Because permits take longer. COVID, called a lot of offices out of the regular workers they had, so you have to wait for permits. It's more and more challenging every day to find power sources because the grids are challenged. And in most of the places in the U.S. and internationally, that's a big challenge. So we're doing the things, the renewables, but we're also doing the things on the engineering on the inside of our data centers to improve the power efficiency of everything we do. So one of the things we do that's been really beneficial is we design our own chips, custom designed to deliver the cloud services the way people want them, but they're also more power efficient, and they're also tend to operate at a better price performance. So you all get better price.
Is that in your P&L?
Yes. Matter of fact,
Really?
I don't know exactly when, a number of years ago, Amazon bought a company called Annapurna Labs. And Annapurna Labs, and you can go on our website, there's a really cool video that takes you on a tour of the Annapurna Labs. They've been developing our custom chips for years. So when we're going to be at reInvent in a week, you'll get to hear about a whole bunch of new stuff. But when you hear us talk about we're launching a new instance and it's using a Graviton chip versus an Intel chip, Graviton is a chip we designed and built. And so each generation of that gets better.
No help from other chip manufacturers, or
we leverage other manufacturers, but from a design and test of the chips, that's all done by our team. And so we in addition to Graviton, which a lot of companies are already using, we've also got another chip that we built specifically for doing the machine learning stuff. It's called Trainium, which is purpose-built to be able to run all those super compute-heavy workloads from
Right.
training large language models or other machine learning models. So we're always trying to find ways to reduce our power consumption. At the same time, we're also making sure we have the renewable sources going forward.
So Rich, getting back to the consumer, you say that one of the beautiful things about AWS is it turns fixed costs into variable costs.
Yep.
Can you talk to that, especially for young startup companies and many of the unicorns that have launched in the past, no longer unicorns, but at one point were unicorns. How does that translate to the consumer?
So one of the beauties of it is it really is a utility. So you can scale up or scale down the resources you need at any point. And so we're behind the scenes because we enter into long-term fixed price arrangements with lots of customers where their price they're paying us is locked. So we have to work super hard as we're in an inflationary environment, we've got challenges with utilities costs. We have to continue to innovate and get more and more effective. So that helps drive down our per unit cost, which means we are able to offer the best pricing. In fact, in its lifetime, AWS has decreased prices 115 times. Has never increased prices.
How come I've never seen that on our bills?
Maybe you haven't cost optimized the way you should.
Oh, okay, here we go.
And interestingly, one of the things we're seeing now is with all of the uncertainty in the economic environment, our customers are doing exactly that. They're going out and trying to figure out how they can cost optimize, tighten their belts. And interestingly, you'd think this is crazy, we actually have people that will come out and help you optimize what you do. It's just part of what we do. The promise we've always made is we will continue to try to get more efficient, and we'll teach you how to use our products better as you continue. But so what's super important is it's completely elastic if you're a company. If you want to run an experiment, you want to run a new app, and you want to test it, you can spin it up on an instance and run it. Decide you want to keep running it, or say, okay, I'm done. I'm going to shut that down. Or if you think about this, in this cost challenge environment, you might say, you know what, I've got, X amount of storage somewhere that's in a high-priced, fast retrieval state storage. Maybe I can move that to a more archival storage and save some money in the near term. So we help customers think through those things. So you get elastic, you can grow up or down as fast as you need to. We're doing all the work to manage the underlying cost pressures through innovation, product development, all the things we're doing to make our data centers more efficient. Plus the other thing for the, especially the early stage companies that are thinking about it, you can deploy globally in minutes. Mm-hmm. The other thing, if you're trying to innovate, having your primary infrastructure in the cloud means your in-house technical staff don't spend their time doing day-to-day blocking and tackling of running an IT shop. They're able to innovate and build apps and do the things that will help them thrill their customers. So it gives you an easier way to innovate. So those are some of the most important reasons why people come to the cloud. So you get fast innovation, you get cost benefit, because over the long term we run at a much larger scale than anybody else. So from a unit cost, we can be better. You can go globally, and you can go up and down as fast as you want.
As an instance of that, I was on the board of a company called Carbonite, which was storage in the cloud, and we were going to expand to Europe, and we actually considered using AWS as our storage. So all we did was pass it through to AWS, just so that we could expand globally, because the massive investment for small companies to drive up a data center it's very intense.
Yeah, the upfront capital costs are substantial.
Yeah.
The ongoing maintenance. Plus the other opportunity that, especially for as we talked a little bit about, the big chunk of companies that are not in the cloud yet, there's this tremendous opportunity.
You say 85%?
85 to 90%. I
still.
think the last time I saw Andy say it was 90%, but I know we keep getting more and more, so I just made a little bit wider range. But for that 85%, they have a huge opportunity to do a modernization and then a move to the cloud, which then gets them into a current architecture, away from some of these legacy systems that have you bound to maintenance for,
and security.
And
because a lot of people, I think, that have on-prem, they feel comfortable that they have their own security, maybe their own private cloud, whatever. How do you convince a customer that security is better in these massive data centers?
So from a security perspective, we're the leading, from a number of certifications across a number of different security organizations that test and give certifications. We have the highest level of security across the cloud. The other thing I would tell you, I just look to the proof is in the pudding, what kind of companies are using our cloud, right? So we forget companies, the US government uses our cloud. You probably have all seen recent announcements. Goldman Sachs is doing things in our cloud. NASDAQ is running things in our cloud. So they've all gotten comfortable that we can adequately secure that kind of data, which gives us a ton of confidence. And look, if you talk to anybody at AWS, the first thing they'll tell you, top priority, wake up in the morning, is the security of our platform. So it's built into every service before any service gets launched, gets a comprehensive security review, because keeping security at the level we have it is foundational to our business.
So we see commercials on TV all the time, all these different companies that are launched on AWS. Great commercials, by the way. What are the vertical markets that you see are the best potential for this sort of offering?
Oh, I think there's a lot of vertical markets that are interesting, but I would say the ones where legacy on-site data centers have the strongest hold. Actually, I would say one of them is financial services. And for a very long time, some of our competitors have owned the financial services database. We have made tremendous inroads there and are seeing a lot of traction. I think another area that's going to be significant is across the entire automotive spectrum. Back to that prior point, because of all of the data that's out there, all the data points that come back from your car. And if you think about all the other ancillary linkages, take it outside the car and go to sort of this general notion of IoT. All those IoT devices everywhere are sending back data, which smart companies are putting in a data lake and learning how to monetize. So there's that opportunity. Obviously, the ISV, the independent software vendors, is a huge vertical because they're continuing to grow. Because similar to what we're doing for customers, they're moving away from perpetual licenses and moving into SaaS businesses. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity there. And then the other one is healthcare.
Healthcare is big.
Massive amounts of data. And we saw it with the pandemic and the development of the vaccines. That took massive amounts of data modeling and AI. And
was a lot of it in?
A significant amount of that was done in the cloud.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, because the companies don't have that ability. You can't spin up that much capacity in that short a window, given they were trying to get a vaccine out in 6-9 months.
Right. So this is an MIT event. Let's talk a little bit more about machine learning, AI. I mean, what do you see the future there? You've got all this data. You're doing a lot of different things with it. How important is that function to the future offerings that you will have?
So for us, machine learning is a super important. It is a kind of a must-win thing for us. We use it today in our own world. In my world, as a simple example, we use machine learning to monitor all of your accounts to make sure you don't have fraud happening in your accounts. Right? We've got a massive data lake we can scan and say this is anomalous behavior. So everybody
so why do I
is going to
keep getting this email that my Amazon account is locked? So hit this and it will unlock, and so will all your money go with it.
You might need a password, because
I think I need
can't help you with
something
I can't help you with your Amazon password for sure. But in our so the continuing look, the machine learning is going to allow us think about the large language models that are being developed. They're going to make it so you can do even more interesting things without being an actual technologist. Think about the world where you can sit down at your computer and say, what are my sales in Asia? What was my growth rate over last year? Say it in a natural language. It gets interpreted. It runs through the analytics and the AI and produces back an output that shows you that. So what it does for all of us, and I think about this in my world as I'm running finance for my shop, is it allows you to leverage your data without having to proliferate programmers and data scientists. So that's another super opportunity, because as those models get smarter and smarter and you can do more NLP, then you're also moving to a place where you can do coding by talking. And super fantastic stuff going in that space where literally you can say what I want it to do, and a catalog from a data lake of code that does that function auto populates into your thing. So there's a ton of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Rich, I think you're a better salesman. I think you missed your calling. Don't you think he's a better salesman than a CFO? You know everything about
I try
this
to
stuff.
I try to do both.
Well, look, thanks so much. Let's open it up for questions so that there's at least 5 minutes here that you can
Sure.
try and stump Rich.
Wow, that's not fair.
Any questions?
Oh, this is going to be.
Really hard to see.
We apologize if I can't acknowledge you because I can't see you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Joe Voss, CFO of Tivoli, and I spent many years at Dell. And so I have a question. Michael recently tweeted that, yes, you get scale, but you're also renting the data center. And is renting more expensive than buying at some level?
I think and I couldn't give you an exact number, but sir, the analysis we've done sort of looking at the TCO over time is, we can provide a better cost benefit solution over the long term than you can get building your own data centers. Certainly, and this is the question, Chuck and I talked about this a little bit. There is this transition for those that aren't already in the cloud, moving to the cloud, where there's sort of a duplication period while you're trying to get out of your on-prem and into the cloud. But once you're in the cloud operating, you just can't match the economics in an on-prem data center.
Mm-hmm. Do you use Dell computers in your data centers?
I have a Dell computer on my desk. But,
That's because you're the partner
But,
on
we,
it, though.
but we build our servers.
You build your servers as well?
Yes.
So the chips and servers? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, we have a very extensive and very capable.
Don't tell my
global
wife
supply
that, because
chain.
I'll get another box in the front of my house that way. Any other questions? Can't see.
We'll just wait.
Impossible to see, yeah.
Kind of feels like an interrogation with the lights like that.
It does.
Hey, Rich. We had dinner last night, so I could have probably asked this at the dinner table. Dave Ferlizzi, CFO of Veracode.
How are you, Dave?
What would you give as advice from one CFO to another on how to best understand and manage your AWS costs? It's for us as an ISV, it's one of our largest costs, and being the utility model, it's a lottery of what our bill is at the end of every month. It's a big challenge. So what advice or what resources would you?
So it's a great question, and I actually had a sidebar with somebody out in the hallway on this exact question before I came in. One of the things that I always tell customers is you should work with your account rep or your sales manager, who your best contact is, and explain, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Because we will actually, as I said before, come out and teach you how to optimize. Now, part of the challenge for you as a CFO, even if optimized, is sort of how do you yourself track what your teams are running. Because I had an anecdotal story from years ago. I was with a CFO, and he said, my engineers loved this AWS thing. They were using their P cards to buy AWS services. And all of a sudden, the CFO woke up one morning and he was spending $5 million at AWS. Now, obviously, that many now came back and wants to have a private pricing agreement and get his own special discounts. But there is a complexity in what kind of workloads you run, where you run them, which type of storage instances you're using, which type of compute instances, and there's opportunity to optimize on all of those things. You just got to understand, Dave, you got to understand the trade-offs of speed, latency, right? Because storage that you don't have to get to immediately, sort of more archival storage, a lot cheaper. If you don't have some of the latency requirements on compute, you can move on different instances in a different place. Plus, some of our compute instances just have better performance because they're more optimized for our chips. So there are opportunities like that for you to be able to go and work with your team to optimize your spending.
Any more questions? I don't see any. Oh, there we go.
Just tell us the day of the life of the CFO part.
Yeah.
The sales part. How big's the finance team?
My
forget
finance
about
team?
this. Forget about this sales thing.
The headcount. So
Rich, forget about the sales pitch and everything. Can you tell us what it's like being the CFO, how you forecast, like when you talk about these things you're trying to tell people to cut their costs? How do you forecast your revenue and stuff like that?
Great question, and we sort of eat our own cake. I have a massive data lake of all of my usage and metering data, and I'm able to run, very smart machine learning models. I am very fortunate, given our scale. I have some resources. I have some data
How big is
scientists.
your organization, Rich?
My org around the world is, say, 1,500 people.
Nascent.
It is nascent. But so we use that kind of data to be able to then run smart machine learning models that are supplemented by, our economists who help us understand the broader trends. And then, like anybody else, your forecast, even a machine learning tool can't understand exactly what you're getting from your field teams. How much coverage do you have? What's your pipeline look like? So there's always going to be some human element and judgment, right? My CEO doesn't look to me and say, what does the ML model say our forecast is going to be? So there's still that human element of sifting through, recognizing what your field teams are doing, and matching that up with what you see in the data. Because we get massive amounts of usage data from all of you to see where the patterns are. And it's similar.
You have
it's
a
interesting.
portal that you're looking at this stuff ongoing all the
I
time,
get
or what?
I get a daily. I get a daily report of usage, and I'm able to look at that throughout the year. Similar to most
Well-run
of the folks.
companies, yeah.
No, well, most of the folks here probably have a console where they can track their usage, throughout a month. But
I wish it was
obviously-
real time, but it's never that way.
Yeah.
Maybe you have it real time.
I do.
1,500 people, it should be real time.
I do not have it real time. I can promise you that. I would love to have it real time.
Yeah.
I do get it in reasonably quick. I think I have about a 1-day lag between actual usage and what I see. So that's pretty good, pretty actionable, and super important for us because and you got to strip it apart into two different pieces because it's, everybody wants to talk about revenue, but for us, we have to build data centers based on usage. And usage could skyrocket without revenue growing at the corresponding rate.
Right.
Because everybody's got a private pricing agreement with a discount that gives them off list
right.
price. So, but we have to build that 10-year build plan is based off of usage. So there's a very complex bit of science and calculus that translates forecasted usage into how many data centers we need, how many rooms in each data center, how many servers, what kind of servers, because the machine learning servers are very different than your regular servers. So that's where we take advantage of some of the really powerful machine learning and analytics tools we have.
So, Rich, it's great seeing a hometown boy do so well. We wish you well.
Thank you.
Folks, Rich Puccio.
Thank you. All right, Chuck.
Great job, man.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you, everybody.